All right, YouTube. Hillary Clinton is not taking responsibility for running a poor campaign, nor is she blaming the people that associated with her campaign actually deserve the blame. I can think of a few. John Podesta for not securing his computer properly, his emails. Donna Brazile and Debbie Wasserman Schultz for openly attempting to rig the Democratic primaries to foist a candidate who was not, let's say, particularly well received off on a party that already, you see, a paradigm shift has begun within the Democratic Party as well. It's not just the Republicans. The Republicans embraced it. Trump won because of this. He's the change candidate. Whether you like it or not, whether you like the direction of change that he's going to potentially bring or not, doesn't really matter. He's the change candidate. You look at the Democrats, they chose the literal standard bearer of the old guard of the DNC and the Democratic Party to be their candidate. It's also funny because you'll remember, some people don't remember this, in 2008, during the Democratic primaries, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote within the Democratic primaries while being trounced by Obama as far as delegates went. So it's extremely funny to me to see people proclaiming now, oh, popular vote matters so much, the electoral count doesn't, when in 2008, if you had gone by that general principle, Hillary Clinton, not Barack Obama, would have been the candidate for the Democratic Party. Clinton is blaming James Comey for her loss. Now, the FBI's reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's material certainly did not help her. I analyzed it at the time and said, well, her campaign's basically doomed because this is sort of the last straw moment, I think, among at least some of her soft supporters, certainly the independent voters, which broke heavily for Trump. I think part of that was the reason why. But her campaign was already suffering long before that. I pointed out months before that Trump was at an advantage. He remained at an advantage continuously. I have at least one shill who keeps making sock accounts, or one disgruntled Democrat, or I don't know exactly what he is, who's claiming, oh, you didn't predict anything, you kept changing your mind throughout the whole race. Take a look back at my videos. Has there ever been a time in the last year that I proclaimed that Hillary Clinton had the advantage in the race? No. Trump's advantage at times was lower, but it was still there. After the sex tape dropped, yeah, his advantage over Clinton dropped precipitously, but it still remained present, and he quickly recovered because there was time to recover. The difference with the FBI investigation, the one thing Clinton's getting right, is that because of when it happened, there was no time for a recovery for her campaign, at least not on any significant level. So what happens is exactly what I said a long time before. Trump was at a peak when the election was held. Clinton was at a trough the moment the election was held. Clinton had a significant disadvantage because of that, because of the natural movement in polling. The polling, of course, not even particularly being correct. IBD was the most accurate poll. I'm thankful that I used them. If I had judged by the LA Times, I would have expected Trump would have won in Minnesota. He would have taken Nevada and Colorado. He might have endangered her in New Mexico. He would have had a chance in Maine. I certainly would have taken Virginia. It would have been a wipeout for Trump. The LA Times polling methodology, which they themselves are crowing about, by the way, had Trump up like 3 or 4 points. That didn't actually occur. Nor, by the way, did the obvious outliers at CBS, CNN, even the Fox News poll, Rasmussen, showing Clinton up by a substantial margin in many cases, nor did they turn out to be true. IBD was where it was at. Which means that for 2 elections in a row, their particular methodology, which doesn't really take into account past turnout, has been the most accurate. I think we're going to see a shift in how polls are conducted, at least by some of these firms. You see what's happening with the New York Times right now? Oh, we pledge again to unbiased reporting. We realize that we were wrong in discounting Trump. They're basically kneeling in fealty to the Trump campaign right now because they want to have access to juicy tidbits from inside the White House. They don't want to be completely shut out for 4 years. Their readership has dropped a lot. the attention that they're getting is almost all negative because they were so wrong. They realize that they probably won't even exist in 4 years if they don't significantly change up the way that they're doing things. Now, the New York Times is like newsprint era media. They're dying anyway. It's not like, oh, well, their unfair treatment of Trump is going to kill them off. No, they've been dying off for a long time now. The TV media, the legacy media of sort of the atomic age, has begun to die off as well. Newsprint is way, way behind. It's funny because actually radio media is doing just fine. I think that's because a lot of people, they drive to work, they listen to like talk radio or something like that. They listen to like NPR, they listen to, you know, Savage or something on the radio, or Limbaugh. Or whether it's liberal, conservative, doesn't really matter. AM, FM, Sirius, it doesn't really matter. People listen to that when they're sort of on the go, as opposed to TV. Well, who's watching television while they're driving down the road? Not a great idea. Newsprint, who's reading a newspaper when they're driving down the road? People don't sit down, generally speaking, anymore and sit and read a newspaper. I don't read the newspaper. I haven't read a newspaper in many, many years. There's no reason to. I can get all of that on the internet. If I want text and pictures and stuff, newsprint style, I can just get it offline. It's free. I don't have to pay anything. Why would I want a newspaper circulation for? It'd be ridiculous. But it looks like my additional prediction will turn out to be true as well. The Democratic Party, while certain elements within it are correctly identifying what happened and saying we need to change the way we're doing things. You see the Sandersites and the Warrenites and the Howard Dean sort of fiscal hawks of the last era all vying for power right now, trying to get their head in for the DNC, trying to drive some sort of change within the party. They're all competing to change things, but they're facing a huge amount of obstruction from people associated with Clinton as well as their general fans. And what you see is that the core of the Democratic Party right now is blaming Sanders, James Comey, minority voters, whites, usually in a general sense, white females specifically. They're blaming everybody but the people responsible, which is the party itself. The Democratic Party is responsible for losing the election. Nobody else is responsible for that. No, it's not some specific voting bloc that committed treason against party loyalty. It's not some fringe candidate who ran and didn't stump around hard enough for Hillary Clinton, who was a traitor like Bernie Sanders. It wasn't any of these things. It was Hillary Clinton and her allies that fucked the election for the Democratic Party. Unfortunately for the Democratic Party, it looks like because that core of power is still substantial, they're going to hold on to much of that power into the midterms, which means you're probably going to get fucked in the midterms. The Democratic Party is probably going to lose a significant amount of support in the House and Senate during the midterms, as well as probably more governor seats, unless Trump turns out to be an unfettered disaster, which I don't think is going to happen. If Trump completely fails, if he turns into a total fuckwad and starts becoming nothing more than a Romneyite neocon, yeah, the Democrats will probably fare pretty well. But if that doesn't happen, if he actually brings even a half-assed change, if he reforms rather than repealing the ACA, that's fine. If he builds a fence instead of a wall, that's fine. If he only deports criminal illegals and legalizes everyone else, that's all well and good. In order to lose the midterms at this point, with the Democratic Party now, days after the election, they're still backstabbing each other, still vying for power, still deciding what the hell happened and what the hell are we going to do. If they continue that for much longer, they're going to have to wait for the next general election past the midterms. They're going to have to wait for 2020 in order to actually reformulate what they're doing. Now, I said before, and I hold to this as well, if the Democrats win the midterms, especially if they've maintained more or less a status quo, some half-assed change in the way the DNC operates, they're not going to fare well in 2020, again, unless Trump completely screws up. If they get trounced in the midterms, pressure within the party will build even to a greater extent. They will end up with a change candidate, almost certainly. I expect that will take the form of a kind of JFK Jim Webb style candidate, and they'll actually fare better. They may or may not win the election, but they'll have a platform that's actually respectable. It'll be more than just blame white people blame people with guns, blame bigotry for all of our problems, that you can't say anything bad about multiculturalism or illegal immigrants or about the Democratic Party or about any female or black politician, or you're a horrible bigot, xenophobe, Nazi. If they keep to that line where they seek to browbeat people into their mentality while offering no palpable change, no change to the way the economy functions, no change to our foreign policy, no change to anything else, what they've done is they'll have continued to alienate especially the Rust Belt. They'll lose even more steam there. They'll have alienated, like the South. We saw Virginia this time around barely went to the Democrats. And in the next 2 to 4 years, you could see it swing further red. If Trump does a good job, it's going to happen anyway. If Trump does a good job, if after 4 years, I'll tell you this, Trump is seen as a good president or a decent president, he'll win Virginia if he runs for re-election. He'll probably also win Minnesota. He might crack the Pacific Northwest. He certainly won't have any trouble in Colorado or Nevada, and it'll be a wipeout. The Democrats will suffer a historic loss. If he does a half-assed job and is seen as a mediocre president, he'll probably still win re-election, because it doesn't look like the Democrats are going to offer any sort of change to put up against him. It'll be a little bit like Reagan-Mondale or something like that, where the Democrats, once again, are flustered, don't understand what's going on, begin to lose the youth of the country. Now, back in 1984 with Mondale, Mondale was specifically asked at the second debate with Ronald Reagan, the Democrats have begun losing the youth vote. How do you expect this party to continue existing? And Mondale sort of flubbed his answer then. And it's happened before. People who look at the youth of this country, the millennials now, before it was, of course, a different voting bus, sort of the Reagan youth era. People who look at millennials and say, well, they're more liberal than the older voters, that might change. You might see the youth suddenly swing to the Republicans and older voters swing to the Democrats. You have no way of knowing whether that will happen. It depends on Trump's policies. It depends on what happens with the Democratic Party. This far out, it's very difficult to gauge what's going to happen in the next election. But if you look at political history, you can get a general sense of what might happen under different circumstances. If the DNC stays the same, if the Democratic Party continues along the Clintonian line of neoliberalism, which is primarily based on wedge issues, they're probably going to fail. There's like a 90% chance they don't win the election. You'll see a second-term Trump, or maybe Mike Pence will take over and he'll run instead, or some other Trumpite Republican will run. If they do change things up, they will fare better, depending on what type of change they bring. If they become a Bernie Sanders or a Warren Socialist Light Party, they'll probably get smattered. They'll keep the youth, but they'll begin losing even more steam in the Rust Belt. This is the reason why I said Sanders would not have won. He might have fared better in some parts of the country. He would have had a greater opportunity in Colorado. He would have done better in Nevada. Those wouldn't have been particularly close races. He might have gotten more support in a place like Texas. But in the Deep South and the Rust Belt, he probably would have actually had less support than Clinton. And he probably would have handily lost the popular vote because of that. He would have done fine. New Hampshire wouldn't have been close. He'd be 10 points up in New Hampshire. But he probably would have lost Minnesota. Michigan wouldn't have been close. He would have lost that by a huge margin. The 3-point or 3.5-point victory Trump saw in Wisconsin would have been more like 5, maybe 10-point victory for Trump. He certainly wouldn't have fared well in Ohio. He wouldn't have retained Florida. They still would have lost that, and Trump still would have won. It just would have been maybe a little bit closer in electoral points in some parts of the country. If the DNC thinks it's a good idea to adopt the Bernie Sanders mentality, they're not going to fare well in the midterms either. Because if Trump institutes his tax reform plan and the economy doesn't do poorly, if it does well or halfway decent, even if it's only the sluggish growth we have now, then a lot of these working class voters will pile right on board with him, including more independents, probably some of the lean blue people in this country. He won't have a problem during re-election. He won't have any problem at all. He also has the unique capability right now to lord over the Democrats and say, look, people on my transition team, there's a female on my transition team, There's a gay man on my transition team. There's a black man on my transition team. What the fuck else am I supposed to do here to placate some of you single-issue voters? He'll lord that over people, and it'll probably be successful. You take a look at what he said about gay rights. When he doesn't come for people's gay marriages or their abortions, and it becomes clear to a lot of these people that are crying and rioting right now that he's not actually far-right. In fact, on social issues, he's a leftist in many cases. A lot of these people are going to begin supporting him. And things are shaping up to look a little bit like 1980 right now. You'll see a boom in the economy, at least temporarily. More jobs will be created. The tax rate will fall. Some of the social pressures that we've seen will begin to deteriorate. I mean that in a good way. They'll begin to go away. And he'll start to look a little bit like Ronald Reagan, somebody who wasn't taken seriously, who wasn't, in many cases, even expected to win, who browbeat our enemies as far as foreign policy goes, and who instituted a fiscal code that, while it caused a lot of debt, and nobody cares because we're already deep in debt, let's face it, it did stimulate growth, it did put more money in people's pockets, and at the end of the day, they vote with their wallets in many cases. A lot of these younger voters, who will see more job opportunities potentially crop up, will become Trumpites. It's going to be like a new Reagan youth. I don't think it'll be quite as drastic as before, where you're seeing millions and millions of new voters in the GOP. But it will certainly tip the balance in some of these close states. Pennsylvania will probably go red again. Michigan will probably go red again. Ohio will go red again. Wisconsin, you could see, again, Minnesota flip. Colorado, he could flip. In which case, the next time around, if he's running against a Democratic Party that operates the way it is now, or institutes change that nobody can believe in, he wins in a landslide. He'll absolutely decimate them. They'll lose even more support, and in the midterms, potentially. Clinton is literally the symbol of everything wrong with the modern Democratic Party. She's pro-war. She's not socially progressive. She's simply a neoliberal fiscal hawk who wants to up the corporate tax rate. She talks a big game about student debt while doing nothing. Trump's student debt plan right now looks more progressive than Hillary's did. That's one so-called far-left idea I can actually get behind. Oh, we'll freeze the interest and allow people to pay a little bit less and hopefully get rid of that debt. It's great for the economy. You want a consumer economy, you can't have a significant proportion of your citizens saddled with too much debt to buy anything other than packets of ramen soup. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah, that could work. And if he does that, if he pulls that off, if he starts decreasing the student debt load, deflates that bubble, prevents it from exploding in our faces, oh man, he'll win re-election by historic margins. He'll have 90% of the young voters on his side at that point. He'll decimate them. He'll completely crush the Democratic Party. They won't know what hit them. If you think that this election was a surprise, the next time around it won't be surprising at all, because everyone will know already, the Democrats are going to come in like 10 million popular votes behind. They're going to lose everything. They might lose California at that point. Don't think that it's not possible for that to happen. The paradigm shift we've seen thus far has given the Rust Belt to the Republicans. It returned Florida to the Republicans, narrowly, but it did. The next time around, depending on what happens in the next couple of years especially, and what happens in the midterms, honestly, you could have deadlock if the Democrats retake the Senate. If they don't change, they won't. If they don't change and Trump does a halfway decent job, the Republicans will retain the Senate, probably build their lead. Trump will go down as at least a good president, possibly a great president, depending on what he does. But for student debt, if the GOP wants to perpetuate itself and really just hammer it home, yeah, the Democrats are now the out party. They're the boring ones. They're the ones that are constantly ranting about race. They're the bigots. They're the ones that don't know how to manage an economy, and they're also the warmongers. My goodness, the Republican Party will start resembling JFK or something like that. It'd be not just a paradigm shift. It would be the largest paradigm shift in 5 decades. It'd be like when Nixon fucked the Republican Party by winning the election by huge margins with the Southern strategy, but also corrupted the Republican Party in the process. If the Republican Party can get past Richard Nixon and sort of the early wave Reaganite mentality, yeah, the Republicans will become, objectively speaking, the good guys of the country. The Democrats will become literally like the Sith Lord Party. They won't be socially progressive. They'll just be interested in upping your taxes, and they won't win. Clinton is symbolizing what's going on in the Democratic Party. Everyone's blaming everybody else, vying for power, backstabbing. That's not the way to prepare for a good midterm run. It's probably not the best way to prepare for a good general election in 2020. We will see, I guess, who wins out within the Democratic Party. If things remain fractured, if you see a fracturing where part of the party is sort of Clintonian neoliberals, part of it goes further left in the Howard Dean sense, sort of a throwback sense, more of them pile on to like socialism light, like Green Party's standard banner with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it will be extremely difficult for the Democratic Party to actually unify and produce a candidate capable of going up against Trump in 2020, or against whoever he sort of handpicks as a successor, whether it's Pence, whether it's maybe Gingrich will running. I don't know. We don't even know if he's going to run for re-election. I think it's more likely now, considering he's got a mandate. He's got a Republican Senate and House. He can do basically whatever he wants. If he does a fraction of the things he claims to want to do and does them fast enough, yeah, his popularity will skyrocket. Things in this country will be better than they have been at least since the early 1980s, probably since the 1950s. It'll be way easier for people like me. My tax rate certainly would be a hell of a lot lower under Trump's tax proposals. That's one of the minor reasons I voted for him. As before, I will say, I'm a soft Trump supporter. I supported him primarily because his opponent seemed ready to start a nuclear war, not because I looked at Trump and saw the great white savior of the Western world, or the Axeman ready to take down globalism or something. It's great to destroy globalism, but at the same time, some people voted with their wallets, and ultimately that tipped the election in Trump's favor. That's about all. Peace out.